Welcome to the Wayne Bennett podcast, celebrating West Virginia's people, places, and the culture of Southern Appalachia. Now here's your host, Wayne Bennett.
Okay, now that you're in the mood for Thanksgiving, this is episode number 42 of Wayne Bennett's podcast, and it's November the 20th, and we'd like to give a big gobble out to the Independence Patriots who won the football game last night. They move on to the semifinals against Bluefield next week. They'll play at home, and good luck to the Patriots. And this Thanksgiving will be next Thursday, and just a little bit of the history. You know, we know that Thanksgiving started in 1621, and some say it lasted for 3 days. They had Squanto was the Native American Indian who could speak English. He was kind of representative for the Native Americans. Some of the food they ate was what we eat today: corn, turkey, deer, lobster. They had plenty, mussels, corn, plums. They didn't have any macaroni salad or potato salad, I don't think. And one of the more famous guys who attended was Miles Standish. George Washington and some of the early presidents had declarations of Thanksgiving, but they never actually declared it a holiday until Abe Lincoln came along, and he declared it a holiday in 1863, actually during when the Civil War was going on. And in those early days also, they didn't have cell phones, so people could sit around and text while they're eating at the Thanksgiving table, which is very rude. But I've got a couple of guests today. Diane Bennett, my wife. Welcome, Diane.
Glad to be here.
You got anybody you want to give a gobble to?
I guess to my parents.
Okay.
I'll gobble them.
And Coach Bernard Bostic stopped by to talk a little bit. You got anybody you want to give a gobble to?
Yeah, I think my mom. She always persevered through all our holiday meals, and she deserves it if anybody does.
Well, this year is the 45th year for the YMCA Thanksgiving Day run, and I happened to be at the first one. I didn't run in it, and I wasn't working at the Y at that time. However, I did work there later, and directed several of those races. But the very first one they had, the Y was at the old Memorial Building, and there wasn't any road races around at that time. And they had 18 people that entered the 5-mile race, and that was a lot of miles back during that time because people didn't run too much. People came in, registered. I'm not sure they gave T-shirts back at that time, which they do most of them now, but 18 people entered. And so they were going to run down South Canola Street to Black Knight Country Club, come back by the Memorial Building, and down to, it wasn't Beckley Newspapers at that time. It was, there used to be a barbershop and a couple other things a little past Elkin Street. Turn around about the railroad track and then come back up and finish at the Memorial Building, which made 5 miles. Well, they had everybody out there, a little cold, and since everybody was already registered, they decided to go ahead and start the race. And so they shot the gun and everybody took off. Well, about 5 minutes later, this guy comes walking out of the Memorial Building, and his name was Bob Boland, and he owned Beckley Garbage, and Bob was a good guy, and he worked out all the time. And he had been inside the Memorial Building. I don't know whether he was using the bathroom or putting his shoes on or whatever, but he came out when the race was supposed to start. But actually, they started about 5 minutes early, and he wasn't in the group that took off. Being inexperienced directors, they didn't know exactly what to do, and he was kind of pushing the fact that he wanted to participate in the race, but he didn't want to start out 5 minutes after everybody else. So they let him go ahead and run, and they had an individual clock on him. So there actually was two legitimate clocks, and I think he actually even won his age group, but he was only running against himself the whole time. But that was the very first one, 45 years ago. And Bernie, do you have any Thanksgivings that come to your mind to you, or?
Yeah, I've got 2 or 3. A couple of them, as always, will involve my dad. But I remember in grade school we used to have a big production at Lincoln Elementary, and we would this particular year everybody got to be a vegetable or a fruit or something, and I ended up being a beet. I didn't even know what a beet was. I didn't know how to spell it, and my mom, of course, knew, and so we went out and bought the stuff so I could be a beet, and colored the whole thing, and to this day I know what sliced beets look like, but I don't know what a real one looks like. Part of it was that at the end, Mrs. Smoot, our music teacher, who was unbelievable, she gave me a lifelong love of music. She was great. We were to sing He's Got the Whole World in His Hands. And we were on a stage. It was upstairs in at Lincoln School. And we're all in our little vegetable outfits, and we're singing Up a Storm.
Which you didn't have any hands, did you?
I had to hold it. The only person that had hands was Mrs. Smoot. And she had the world in her hands. And it was in a frame, and she had glued all these little people around the edges of the frame that the world sat in. And she come up the steps, and she tripped. Oh. And then the world went out of her hands. And I'm just standing there thinking, and it's like, well, she doesn't have the world in her hands anymore, does she? But nobody said a word. I mean, she was tough, and back then, you didn't laugh or anything. But to that day, it was just kind of like, yeah. and immediately I felt really bad because all 3 of us being teachers, everybody puts so much time into stuff like that, and when you're dealing with grade school kids particularly, it's like herding cats, and they, I mean, everybody was real sympathetic towards her. All the kids were, I felt like.
What about you, Diane? You got
it's funny. I was trying to think when you told me that we were going to do this back when I was a kid, our Thanksgivings then, and I don't remember any until I don't know if it was because we didn't have a whole lot of money. There were 5 of us kids, and of course Mom and Dad, and Mom didn't work. She was a stay-at-home mom. But I guess the first Thanksgivings I really remember are, after we got married and stuff. We meet at your mom's, and then I'd have to go to my mom's, and it seemed like a whole day of eating, which was okay, that was fun. But
well, we had another one I can remember that's kind of tied into the Thanksgiving Day run also. The first year that the Y had moved to the building on East Main Street, Kim Reedy was working at the Y, and he took over the job of directing the Thanksgiving Day run. And so he came up with the idea that we would finish the race instead of the old memorial building, which the Y wasn't there anymore. We would finish in front of the new YMCA, which was downhill East Main Street, pretty steep, and that's where the sticks and the award stuff would be given out. Well, it just so happened the night before the race, it rained like crazy, and it was cold that morning, and there was a ton of leaves on East Main Street when you started over the hill, and with the little ice, the race was at 8:30 in the morning, little ice on the road. When the people were finishing the race, they come running down the hill and hitting those slick leaves, and I mean, they were people falling all over the place. Lucky somebody didn't get killed, but we didn't get too many complaints. But it was dangerous, and that was the only year that they ever had the finish in front of the new Y. They did a couple years where they finished up behind the Y. And of course, now the Thanksgiving Day run starts at the soccer fields, runs to Woodrow and back, and it's a much safer route than what the old one was, but it's still 5 miles. And but that's one of the things that keeps popping in my mind was we always, when I directed the race, we would have to put the race on, and then we would go usually over my mother's and eat. And a lot of times they ate before we got there because we wouldn't get there till like 12:30 or 1. And they were early eaters, I think.
Well, that's when we decided that we'd invite the people from the Y because we were both working there. And then we decided that rather than make your mom wait or just go over and eat by ourselves, that we would have dinner here. And we would invite all of the staff that weren't able to either go home or didn't have anybody, they weren't married or whatever. And so we'd have a big dinner here after the race because we both had to work that race. And that was a good time too, having all those people here.
Anything else, Bernie, that you remember?
Yeah, I've got... like I say, I've got a couple of Dad stories. One was that Dad, anytime he come to the house, he never wanted anything to eat. And it got to be a running joke. Of course, he never got it, but it was always a running joke. It was like, son, I'll just a glass of water and some lettuce. What are you, Dad? You
Rabbit.
Yeah. I said, okay, Dad, okay. Of course, we never did that, but that's what I always said. Well, he'd come up, and he had come up from Florida and come over to the house for Thanksgiving. We had it at our house, and and what do you want, Dad? Well, I'm not real hungry. I just eat to survive. I don't eat. I don't like to eat. 3 plates later, and 3 desserts later. I mean, Dad, do you really need that third dessert? And he went, well, son, it's not a meal if you don't have dessert. I said, okay. And then we loaded him up some and sent him home with some too. So that was always kind of a joke. And then we used to go up to Ohio, Cleveland. My mom's sister had moved up there like everybody else did in the 50s to get jobs. And we'd go up there for Thanksgiving, and it was always cold. And it seemed like it always snowed up there. But they had, the May Company had a big store up there somewhere off Lake Erie, and it had a Santa Claus would come in a helicopter. Well, I'd never seen a helicopter before, and that kind of stuff. But man, it would be so cold, and just when it was so cold, you didn't think you could make it. Santa Claus would come in. Well, you get close to the front, well, then that helicopter would blow that snow, and you couldn't see him land, and I mean, it got like 10 degrees colder. And then after we come home, then my dad and my uncle would go out to a bar, have a drink or two, and he had, back then my uncle had a box, and you push a button and it laughed. And he just put it in his pocket. Well, he didn't tell my dad about that. And so they go to the bar, and they're sitting there drinking, and my uncle reaches in there, and Uncle Donnie, and he hits that button and starts laughing. Well, everybody's looking around like, who is that laughing? And my dad didn't know, and he's like, Donnie, you here laughing? And I went, just ignore it. Don't worry about it. There's just somebody back there in the back. And it went on for like 5 minutes before he finally turned it off. And some of those guys never did know what it was on, but we always got a kick out of that because my uncle, he was always a jokester like that. So that, other than that, everybody was always around at Thanksgiving, and we were really serious eaters. Christmas was for different things, but Thanksgiving was always for eating. And it's like Diane, we'll go to my mom's early this time, and then later we'll go to Val's mom and dad's, and then we'll eat again. And I've become very accomplished at that. I think I do a good job.
Yeah. Well, it's come down now where I'm the oldest daughter. Mom isn't able to cook, so I've been cooking dinner.
Yeah.
And it used to be that they would come here. We even bought this new table so that it has an extension so we could have everybody around the table. Well, pandemic hit, and Mom and Dad, they're in their 90s and they don't get out much. So now I cook it here, but then I have to load it in the car and take it over there, which is fine. It works.
Well, speaking of laughing on Thanksgiving, what would Thanksgiving be without a few Thanksgiving jokes? And I've got a couple one-liners here. So my family told me to quit telling Thanksgiving jokes, but I told them I couldn't just quit cold turkey. If pilgrims were alive today, what would they be famous for? Their age.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Thanksgiving's the only holiday where you eat the mascot.
Yeah. I got the, yeah.
What do you call a running turkey?
Scared.
Fast food. What do you call an evil turkey?
Bad to the bone.
Poultrygeist. What was a turkey ruined on Thanksgiving? I don't know, but I suspect foul play.
Thank God Thanksgiving only comes once a year.
How many cooks does it take to stuff a turkey? Only one, but you have to really squeeze him in there. Yeah, you can't listen to that unless you laugh yourself. And we have one list, though. If you're 55 and over, a lot of things you might be thankful for or things you've experienced or witnessed or enjoying. This is just a few things. But think about, something to think about. You experienced disco, the Macarena, the Beatles, the Bay of Pigs, the Edsel, the John Kennedy assassination, the Bobby Kennedy assassination, the rise and fall of the Berlin Wall, the end of the Cold War, Hurricane Katrina, the first man on the moon, the Vietnam War, Cassius Clay or Muhammad Ali, Patty Hearst, Star Trek, the Martin Luther King Jr. assassination, the Nixon resignation, the Clinton impeachment attempt, Perry Mason, My Mother, the Car, Star Wars, the word groovy, Tiny Tim, Elvis's death and reported later sightings, undergarment burnings, go-go boots, Twiggy, Dr. Ben Casey, the Munsters, Pet Rocks. And this list can go on, and it kind of makes you thankful for some of the things you really like. But that's been our Thanksgiving show, and appreciate you guys coming and talking to us. And anybody wants to be on the show, just give us a ring or awbennett50.com and check us out on Facebook. And until next time, gobble,
Gobble, gobble, gobble.